Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Fake Accents Unite. We're over 120 episodes now, 122, I do believe. And I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, the Britisher. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. So about Oprah Winfrey's latest interview.
I hate you.
I didn't mention the people I was not supposed to mention. I'm just
I
by
know,
chance mentioning Oprah Winfrey. I don't see what your problem is.
The self-proclaimed Queen of America. Oh, no, ridiculous. I actually, I banned...
The person who may or may not one day run for president.
I did ban... I made Twitter censor anything to do with that interview, so that I didn't have to deal with it. So I was quite pleased with that. But
I did put out a tweet earlier today. Let's see whether I can actually find this, because there is some source of pride on my part, because I did actually I did put out a video. I don't know. I put the date on it somewhere. Let's see whether I can see the date here somewhere. There we are. Yes, 2nd of December 2017.
Oh, good grief!
That is the date of my Meghan Markle video.
Right.
So I can hereby officially say I told you so.
Fair enough. I've enjoyed some of the memes, like the Virgin Meghan who even watched Suits anyway, that sort of thing.
This is one of the problems. I think it is a simple fact that nobody in this country has seen the thing.
No, but also nobody should care outside of Piers Morgan and co. That's the other thing. Why are we talking about this? I made a decision that we were not going to talk about this. If people want to talk about this, they could bring it up themselves.
Just my way of humiliating.
If we find ourselves forced to talk about it, we're forced to talk about it. I do not want to talk about this interview. So that's where we're at today. Okay. It's nice to see everybody, the regulars and the non-regulars in chat. It's good to see Paul Crane. I'm loving the train-related accounts, confusion and delay. Nice to see Sunny Jim, Mr. Gently Benevolent, Sean Lenkus, Eccles, Meh, and Admiral Bees, amongst others. So
Eccles, is that the maker of the cakes?
No, it's just the owner of the rights to it, and thus they are incredibly wealthy. So, obviously last week we didn't have a Fake Accents Unite. You were laid out, Mr. Britisher.
Still sort of half laid out-ish.
Are you recovering?
I've got a heat pad on my back, and I'm squirming uncomfortably in my chair. But we'll see how far I get in this. So if after an hour or so I have to call halt, forgive me. But yes, I had a spectacular back spasm just about 1.5 hours or so before we would have gone on air last week. So I just simply informed you that I was horizontal on the sofa and there wouldn't be there wouldn't be a contribution on my part.
There you go. The real question to that then is, was she worth it?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't want to say which member of the ladies' netball team betrayed you.
Well, it's fine. I've got several teams.
Well, yes, as I am fully aware. I mean, I've seen the photos.
So, I do just want to do a quick thing. Forgive me, Britisher. Whilst I go into this I asked this question directly to the chat. Obviously, we had somewhat little bit of a replacement stream on the Thursday with Aidan Paladin, going into the rise and fall of science by Sean Last. As a result of that, several people have sent in other articles that they'd like me and potentially her to go through. I would like to get an idea from the chat, from the regulars, etc. Those of you who tuned in, what you thought of that stream. Whether you thought it was a good thing and that it was accessible and all that good stuff, so you understood everything that was going on and you enjoyed it or not, as the case may be. So do let me know. Right, back on track. So you've had You've had ample time now to recover, Britisher. I expect nothing but punctuality from you going forward.
So you expect me to be a sort of a veritable trapeze artist this evening, do you?
More like a contortionist, like the lady in the magician's box,
or like
who does the legs,
or like certain gay gentlemen on a channel I just highlighted on the week that was this weekend.
Do tell.
Well, I am subscribed. I follow YouTube on Twitter. So, therefore, I get to see their responses once in a while to someone who's basically saying, you've banned my channel, or you've done this, or you've done that. So, the one thing that hove into view was somebody saying, WTF, question mark, several times, if you know what I mean. What the hell is this? To which YouTube then responded, we have looked into this repeatedly, and we have stated that this falls well within our sort of guidelines and values and this, that, whatever. Tut, 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 if you know what I mean.
Right.
Except, of course, the examples shown by the person highlighting this particular channel were thumbnails of someone kind of gurning into the camera.
Oh, yes.
And the video being called something like Real Richard. I don't know if I want to get your channel demonetized.
Yes.
Or dildo and things like that. Or, guessing what it is that is being inserted by another person. This kind of being, homosexual nirvana.
Yes.
So I highlighted this by showing one or two gentlemen, really seriously flexible chaps, flashing their underpanted gussets at the camera, to kind of think, well, look, folks, this is apparently permissible, so much so that, tut, 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 people are asking again, why should this not be permissible? While, of course, the likes of us are having enormous trouble just being permitted to speak on this platform.
I see.
And what can one say? When one catches a sort of an eyeful, one quickly gets the point, as in, you have got to be kidding me, And I very much highlighted the fact that if this would be, say, Belle Delphine, then no doubt her channel would immediately be banned again.
Yes.
But because this is, I don't know, Bellus Delphinus, it's fine.
Bellus.
It's Juan from Rio, if you know what I mean. You just go, this cannot be true. But yes, the double standard is just sensational, is all I can say. And therefore, I just thought it was worth showing. As an aside, YouTube is still thinking about whether that particular episode is to be monetized. Because no doubt they would like to state that it is unspeakable, the thumbnails I've put up. But of course, the thumbnails being of the very channel that they say is perfectly okay and has no problems.
Yeah.
It may be causing them a headache, I don't know. But yes,
I mean,
it's just staggering.
We have known, people have said it's not Belle Delphine, it's Belle End for this one in particular. We know anyway that YouTube is inconsistent on its standards, but in terms of where this goes, right? Because this is one of those little stories which was highlighted in the Twitter sphere, but nowhere else. And YouTube still maintains its kind of tech monopoly on the space. So, how far is it going to go? I would consider it at the moment that it is utterly blatant. Not just the favoritism that YouTube shows, but the ideological bias. Not to mention all of the bizarre and poorly, like, there's no user handbook. When you sign up to YouTube and you create your channel, you don't get given a user guide and it says, well, this is how the algorithm works and this is what you should prioritize in order to get noticed by the algorithm, and these are the things that you should avoid. YouTube is very woolly with its statements. You can get some stuff out of them, but it tends to be a vague set of precepts rather than anything concrete.
Well, they also don't tell you about their own efforts to deceive their own algorithm. You see, I think one of the things that a lot of people don't understand is they don't really mess with their own main algorithm, because if they were to do so, that would really screw things up for them. So the way in which they have to promote things or suppress things is by basically lying to their own algorithm, by basically telling their own algorithm that this is more successful than it actually is, or by kind of deceiving their own algorithm into thinking that this isn't actually as successful as it is, and therefore it doesn't need as much promotion.
The way I look at this in terms of an allegory, or a metaphor, if you will, is over in America. So America's very stringent in some states when it comes to, in particular, online gambling. So the casino scene is alive and well in America, the in-person thing, but online poker and stuff like that has had a very difficult a difficult upbringing. And the reason for this is because several online casinos were caught when they were regulated with some accounts being so-called super accounts. Super accounts being accounts that could see everyone's cards at the table, right? Which yes, obviously enabled the people who owned such accounts to have ridiculous ROI, return on investment.
I would never have thought so.
So, the way I look at this is, it's like everyone on YouTube, all of the creators are in the opposite position of this, of being able to see their cards. Nobody can see anyone's cards, including their own. And then occasionally, YouTube basically tells someone what cards they've got. And then, because the YouTube is the super account, and this allows that particular creator to get ahead, or it allows, in this case, it allows the algorithm to prioritize them. They literally do it. But it's nobody's managed to catch this at an infrastructure level, and YouTube has been remarkably adept at protecting the legal privacy of its. There are no
one has leaked it. That's the only way that this will ever come to the fore, is if someone inside actually leaks it.
There are no whistleblowers at YouTube at the moment, so we haven't been able to see something like, if somebody came out and said, look, here are the list of all of these sources which are being promoted above and beyond where they are. I mean, we've got anecdotal stuff to suggest this. There was a chart which was released a couple of years ago which talked about, which showed the number of times that preferred news channels get on trending, even though their views are much lower than other such people, etc. The suppression of the politisphere. But that is really the only. That's just an observational thing.
Wasn't there also one where Razor Fist once made a video in which he just went for about 5 minutes, blah 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 blah, yada yada yada, blah 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 blah, so there wasn't actually any content, and the video was still suppressed, and he said, look, it can't be any banned words, I didn't say anything.
That's the other thing, the reveal of either the tag, which is attached to channels,
it's attached to chat.
Yeah. But how is it attached? Where's the list? Do we have a concrete list? All it takes is someone to leak the list of YouTube channels which are on which have been marked with a tag, and all of a sudden it's
to give you an idea of how sometimes things can go wrong for them. So on my channel, something has been going wrong for them recently. I don't know if you were aware that there was a bit of a viral phenomenon just recently with sea shanties.
Yes.
So obviously I had a sea shanty on my channel. And what happened was that basically people then started looking for stuff, and I got placed on various playlists, and there was no way really of suppressing those plays, if you know what I mean. So that video suddenly started climbing up the ranks over the recent months, but it also started bringing some people to my channel. So in the last few weeks, I've stopped dropping. More so, obviously, once people started coming onto the channel, they started sort of looking around a bit. Now, what would people fancy who would be listening to sea shanties? Well, how about something naval? So obviously I have that video about Edward Pellew, the frigate captain, which is now my third most popular ever video, which kind of proves the point. So if I'm putting out a video these days, it won't go past 5,000. But this video has just passed 45,000.
Oh, good for you,
and it's done most of that work in the last 6 weeks. And that's just it. If you give people the opportunity to see these videos, they seem to like them. They seem to pass them on to their friends. They seem to put them onto playlists. The problem is these videos aren't getting shown to anybody. So yes, it's clearly going on. We know it's happening. And, I've done various little experiments myself, a bit like Razorfist with his blah, blah, blah video. So, yes, it's fairly clear what they're doing. As you point out, we don't know the specifics. We don't know whether, for example, they've got like a point scoring system where they attach minus points to certain videos. And if you get enough of those minus points on a list, then that puts you down a tier or something like that as a channel. We have no idea. So again, playing around with those ideas, I've been deleting some old videos and stuff like that. You try to play with the various possibilities, but you're tapping around completely in the dark. But what is absolutely clear is that there are things going on. I mean, we've seen some channels that I cannot say are that particularly fantastic do absolutely remarkably well. And I've seen other channels that are just, I think, very good, and they're getting no traction whatsoever. And you just feel, yes, if they have somehow offended the YouTube gods, then it's very, very difficult to climb out of that hole again.
Mm-hmm.
Are you still with us?
I'm
talked you into a stupor.
I'm still with it. Still with it. You.
But no, it's just, to me, it's blatantly obvious that it's going on, and it's extremely frustrating. But then when you have got, gay guys flashing their gussets at the camera, and they've got 1.3 million subscribers, and YouTube is defending them on Twitter. And meanwhile, yes, then, as the opposite of that, Belle Delphine suddenly gets knocked out, just gets her channel cancelled out of the blue without any warning. And you look at those two channels, and you just look at the thumbnails, and you just go, now, which one of those two is more provocative? There's no doubt. It's beyond doubt. But it's related, I would say, this phenomenon, to the float at the gay pride event. That for some reason, all rules are off. Whereas if you would do the same thing with, say, half a dozen strippers on a float going through the town centre in order to advertise a strip joint, oh my, you would be fined and you would be punished in every way possible.
All of a sudden, YouTube starts screeching, estrogen, estrogen!
Yeah, but if it... Well, I mean, it's not even YouTube. It would just be the general law. I mean, the same police officers that will be dancing along next to the gay pride float with rainbow face paint would be the ones who would be arresting you for having the 6 strippers on a float in the town centre, if you know what I mean. It's because yes, one would be an offence against taste and decency, and the other one is obviously upholding gay rights. Right on, dude. It's just, yes, you look at these things and just everything inside of you just screams, this cannot be. But yes, just talking is evidently more offensive. And talking in, let's face it, a fairly non-controversial manner is deemed more offensive than the gay underpant boys with things up their backsides.
Not that we've set you off on some kind of personal vendetta-driven.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I'm now on a war path. What can I say? No, it just, when I saw that, it was one of those jaw drops moment.
So in protest, would you say now that you are going to fully embrace the gender identity of super straight to become the oppressed minority?
I was tempted to point to that when you used the super user or super account thing. I was wondering whether to ask whether that's only open to super straights. So we had the same segue in mind, I think.
Are you ready to become the oppressed majority you always meant to be?
Because yes, the super straights are clearly an oppressed group. Something needs to be done. I mean, they're a minority. They're less than the super straight men are clearly less than 50% of the population.
Well, we don't know.
We need to be saved.
We don't know. Super straight representation has never been tested, so we simply do not know. For those,
and they're already picking on us on social media.
For some people who have this has passed them by, a viral TikTok. I know only the best news sources on this show. A viral TikTok from a young chap who said that he was sick of being called transphobic for being disgusted by trans women,
for not wanting to go out with trans women.
Yes, he decided that he has created super straight, a new gender identity, which means that you are only attracted to men or women who are cis-normative and heterosexual.
May I correct you there, because getting the language correct is very important here.
Go on.
It's not a gender identity, it's a sexuality.
No.
Super straight is a sexuality.
Yeah, fine. So it's a sexual attraction to only the cis men or cis women, depending on who you are.
Yes,
and these come with the
man, and you fancy only women who are actually born female.
Yes.
Then you are super straight.
And similarly, of course, this comes with super gay and super lesbian. So gay men who only want to have sex with other gay men. And
yes, Pink News, of course, has already run an article in which they are praising someone's brilliant response to this, in which they argued that, well, surely that would mean that you're not super straight, that you're actually defective straight.
That
you're attracted to less.
It's just like, no.
And this, according to Pink News, is a fabulous argument.
Well, Pink News thinks many things are fabulous arguments.
Well, I think quite a lot of things are fabulous, according to Pink News.
Yes, I was going to... You've beat me to it. So we've obviously there's a few funny responses to this, because, of course, this has taken the internet by storm today, more so than stupid interviews with disgraced royals that we might not talk about. And so we've got things like that people have been talking about the colour scheme, for one. If I bring up this image here, which says ally. Super straight is the way of the future. Be on the right side of history and make yourself an ally. And it's a badge with ally and the super straight logo on it. And naturally the super straight logo is in the people pointed out, what colours is it? And it's black and orange. So there's an obvious allusion to
Trump. Clearly an allusion to Trump.
Pornhub. And and in addition to other things, which include Deathstroke from the comics, the Minecraft bee is now one of the staunchest allies of super straight people. The Minecraft bee is super straight.
I'm so glad I don't know what that means.
You be pleased. Super straight, a sexual preference in which one prefers only the opposite sex with the exclusion of transgender people. The super straight flag consists of black and orange. I would not date a transgender man. You're transphobic. No, I'm super straight.
Well, I mean, this gag kind of works on a great many levels, doesn't it? The chief one simply being, well, if you make up stuff, then we can also make up stuff.
Well, there is an interesting an extra point with this. If I'm going to edit the transform here so that people can see the images properly. 500, 400, whatever. Right, 400. No. 400. See what we've got here. So hopefully people can see this a little easier now. Yeah. So learn the difference. Straight is someone who is attracted to men, women, trans men and trans women. Super straight is just men to women and women to men. And that's it. Then gays and lesbians, and then super gays and super lesbians, which is it's all quite amusing. But this comes with this whole range of people who are very angry, very, very angry at the trending of super straight. Super straight, more like super cringe.
Oh yes, you can imagine it has rubbed rubbed a great many people up the wrong way, because precisely it plugs into that very thing.
Well,
basically, if you're constantly sort of ad infinitum creating new expressions and arguing your way out of any problem you find by just inventing a solution, if then the other side starts doing the same thing, that's when you end up with super straight. Yes.
So we also have this issue of the reactionary trans activist who has been launching death threats against the super straight movement. So here we are. The F is super straight.
May I say that is not a very ladylike thing to do.
No, the F is super straight. That's not a real thing. OMG, people are ridiculous. How am I being a bigot towards gay people? I'm being a bigot towards super straight people who are not valid. Go burn in fire. Burn the super straight flag.
I think that person is threatening the existence of super straight people.
Indeed. I think I've become a super straight hate page. I wish all super straight people, in quotes, are very die. There's a new disease going around called dumb F-itis. Some symptoms are identifying as super straight, pretending to be oppressed because you're super straight, saying you're part of LGBTQ+ because you're super straight. Be careful and wear a mask.
Has anybody done a survey yet to work out how many Pepe the Frog super straight cartoons there are so far?
I don't know, but there are many. We have...
I've not seen one, I'm just guessing. I know the way. I know how these things go. So that would be the obvious go-to, wouldn't it?
Sorry, say again.
Well, that would be the obvious go-to. Pepe the Frog in some sort of super, with some sort of super straight flag or whatever would be the obvious go-to as far as the easiest first off the mark memes would go.
Yes. The super straight Pepe does exist. He is himself with black and orange skin. If you want to know why anyone calls it transphobic to be super straight, it is because trans women look exactly like women, so it is nothing more than a preference to be attracted to us. We are nothing. Women are nothing unique, just looks.
Trans women look exactly like women,
according to the trans positivists.
Yeah, I'm struggling not to contradict this person.
Today is Super Straight Women's Day. There are so many new accounts like Super Straight Norway here. Today is
does the name Eddie Izzard mean anything?
I know. Today is International Women's Day. I would like to spread love to our super straight women in the beloved royal family. Thank you to the to Queen Sonia, Crown Princess Mette-Marit, and especially our future Queen Ingrid Alexandra. There we go. I now officially identify as super straight. I'm now part of LGBTQ+, which has spawned this other flag. So there's the black and orange flag, and then the anti-super straighters have put up this black and orange flag with a great big red stop, the cross through anti super straight thing, telling people to fuck off.
Well, I've left, given that you've mentioned International Women's Day, I've left a tweet of mine in the stream chat for you.
Oh, thank you. Ever so thank you.
Not that you'll recognise anybody in any of those photos, of course, because you being you.
For goodness sake.
But quite a few other people seem to get the joke.
Happy International Women's Day with a load of men dressed as women. Yes.
Well, yes. I mean, one is Alistair Sim, and then you've got Laurel and Hardy, and then you've got Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis from that film you refused to watch.
I knew Laurel and Hardy made sense to me.
Oh, bravo.
So there we go.
You do realise that Alistair Sim is sort of acting royalty where Britain is concerned.
Dear. So what do we have here?
He's the male answer to Margaret Rutherford, I think is the fair way of describing it.
Who is Margaret Rutherford?
Have you ever heard of the Miss Marple films?
Yes, I've seen Miss Marple.
The black and white Miss Marple films, not the recent dross, the proper stuff.
I can't remember. It's been so many years since my mother was watching them. You are like my mother in many ways, Britisher.
Well, there you go. See.
I love this thing because a large number of the arguments about the super straight thing have been you're invalidating the identity of trans women, and of course Super Straight Scotland here has it right. Remember, if someone is super straight, it does not mean they're transphobic. Supersexuals, which I love the name, support the trans community whilst having their own sexual preferences. Calling a supersexual transphobic is a prime example of superphobia and is an attempt to erase our sexuality. Supersexuals, I can support your right to exist even though I have no desire to sex you. Superphobes, your sexuality is bigoted and transphobic. I guess you just want all trans people to die. Super straight and super proud, deal with it. I love this. Oh
dear God! I can feel that. I can feel a ban on Superman coming because he will be too traumatic. The franchise will be dead.
It's amazing. Right, that's that. Let's see what we've got. Here's some super chats coming in.
Super chat. Oh my God!
Super chats.
You didn't call them super chats, did you?
Super chats for the super straight community. So it's going. Says 604.937 seconds late.
You see, but I think we need to start asking ourselves how much too late Scowen is when he brings these reports about by how much too late we are.
We definitely started on time within the minute, and for some reason he's 10 minutes behind. I think this is perhaps he's telling us he's late. Couldn't even hit 120 seconds as a mark of pride, or 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 13, 34, 42, or 69. Such a Welshman. I don't think I've ever been accused, insulted by being accused of being Welsh.
I mean, it's. I mean, given that the suggestions range across the entire nation as to what I supposedly am, so I've been told I'm Welsh. I wouldn't say
What?
I've been accused of being Welsh. The simple problem being that I've only really set foot in Wales twice. So I don't know whether that can make me a Welshman. I don't know. But, I mean, I'll leave it to the greater expertise of people out there.
Was the first time you stepped foot in Wales when you stepped foot outside your mother? I don't know.
You mean I walked out,
Yes.
did I?
Well, I with monocle in tow, that's what I expect.
No. If the question is, was I born in Wales? No, I was not.
I think that the British law would lay down that you were.
How would the law suggest that I was born in Wales? Was that when Wales still encompassed the whole of Britain?
I know. I think in terms of the British law, you were conceived between the twin peaks of two of the Rhinogs in Wales. And,
I see.
And that was that. And as you were born,
so not in the not sort of in the centre of the circle of Stonehenge.
No, that's Salisbury.
As part of some strange ancient sacrifice.
That's Salisbury Plain, and you put too much importance on your birth. It's your life that was important, not your birth. Don't be ridiculous. So, whereas you were born between two mountains, in the lee of a stone, in the shadow of some form of waterfall, but it was very picturesque, I'm sure.
Not obvious. Have you forgotten to take your tablets again?
The nice people with the white coats give them to me. There we go. We were talking about Scowen and his lateness, etc., etc. All right, EC90. Britisher, if you want to increase your sub count, you need to do some more wholesome videos about the history of women's undergarments.
Yes. That, by the way, was one of my little tests. Because if there was ever any clickbait that was pretty much YouTube cocaine, yes, and I believe that one has still not reached 10,000, if I'm not mistaken.
Have you considered that you're just really bad at making YouTube content?
Oh, I must be. I mean, that's why the Pellew video has generated something like 30,000 plus views in the last month. Because obviously I make videos that nobody wants to watch.
Exactly. That's the only explanation I can think of.
But yes, I mean, one of the giveaways. I mean, I've pretty much given up checking. But one of the giveaways I noticed is when in the opening hours of your video, your count jumps backwards by considerable numbers, several times. That tends to be the giveaway of them not liking how your video is performing too well. And like that, they manage to assure that your video will be shown with the correct requisite number to the algorithm, and therefore won't be promoted beyond what they would like to see it promoted as.
Oh, who cares?
It's rather interesting when you kind of you press refresh, and you suddenly have several hundred fewer views of the video than you had just a second ago. It's just one of those things where you realise that they're messing with you. Yes.
Oh, it's fine. Teabag who laughs says, "Gee, I do hope my channel isn't suppressed." And then smug face.
Teabag has a channel.
He does.
I've never heard of it.
Yeah,
what kind of channel does this? I mean, this must be a tea-related channel,
yes,
no doubt, with a name like that.
It wouldn't be anything related to true crime documentaries.
True crime documentaries? Is this crime against tea? People who sort of microwave water with sort of Lipton's powder in it.
Making a cup of tea every day until the Empire returns, yes.
I will have to check that out, this tea bag, you say.
Artful Lodger says, "What's a super driller?" Are you aware of the driller meme, Britisher?
I am not.
Just, you don't want to be called one. Let's just leave it at that.
Okay, we shall leave it there, shall we?
There we go. Harald Hardad, who should have won in 1066, says, "You need foundations of physics." Yeah, I basically is it the Rutherford Gold experiment that I messed up last on the stream? I was trying to describe how we basically discovered that it's mainly empty space in between atoms and the discovery of the nucleus, and I completely had an enormous brain
This is
fart
completely
in there.
unnecessary. In order to understand physics in all its glory, all you need to do is watch a rather well-endowed lady jump up and down on a trampoline when her sports bra is failing.
What? Like, that's a big... Just... No.
You see, that gives you a very good understanding of, you know, the various powers involved in physics.
You just have a one-track mind. That's it. Your ulterior motive is never plain.
Or I have a way of stopping you from sliding into talking about nuclear physics.
It's not nuclear physics.
Well, particle
It's
physics
particle
or whatever
physics.
it was you were on, where I was already blanking out, thinking, how do I stop him?
Oh, for goodness sake.
So I think I found something that the audience, more than likely, as a mental image, found considerably more interesting.
Get a Gripper says, a 20-year-old Britisher was Virginia Dare's super straight milkman.
I don't know what to make of that, because I don't know what that means.
Virginia Dare. Virginia Dare. The first English child born in a New World English colony. What happened to her remains a mystery. Something to do with that. The first Christian born in Virginia. I don't know why you happen to be a milkman in this particular scenario. But there we go.
Mind you, I think one thing is worth saying, and that is we expect to see Teabag in the near future be doing some serious promoting of our channels. Don't you think?
I expect so, yes.
Given the amount of
free sponsorship,
of completely innocent, oh my god, who is this man, that we do once in a while. Yes.
Hollow 1916 finally says, we of the SS are valid and we exist. We can't change how we were born, straight in a super straight body. Yes, that's the other thing going around, the SS thing with it.
So it has now become that, has it?
Yeah.
Yes. This is perhaps not the way to go, people. Just sometimes you can bend a joke too far, and in doing so, you basically score a serious own goal. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, by all means.
I mean, the funny thing with this, of course, is that it's census time in Britain. So we have the census every 10 years.
So you think it will be a sort of like a Jedi as a religion phenomenon, that you will have super straight sexuality?
Well, an enormous number of people identified as Jedi in the previous one. And in New Zealand's previous one, interestingly, but they cannot basically. There's an argument to be made. What information is collected on the census, and on the census usually it's just demographic data. When it comes to religion, because religion is of interest to the state, it becomes difficult for them to do it. If you, for instance, if it is a crime to fill out the census form, in jest, effectively, you are supposed to be as honest as possible. And if you can't be as honest as possible, you can be fined up to £1,000 for and having your data omitted. But when it comes to things like religion, as you say with the whole Jedi thing, they can't prove that you don't actually believe that you're a Jedi. And so, a lot of atheists identified as Jedis. And so, but there's nothing they can do to stop it, for all they know, because it's a self-selecting category, right? And similarly, there was a campaign recently to remove gender and replace it with biological sex, because for what purposes does the government need to know your gender? It doesn't. And so sex would be the logical thing, because in terms of healthcare provision and that sort of thing, which our government has a hand in, that would be a useful thing to know. But this was overturned because, wokies in Parliament and people who don't really understand what's going on, and gender is the way we've always done it, and therefore we'll just keep doing that and let people add whatever categories they like. And so it comes to a strange conflict. So of course you will have people saying, that they are female, and then changing what the gender they identify to be male or woman or man or whatever. And so there's also scope there for there to be a new gender identity, a new sexuality to be defined, and so when it comes to this, a large number of people who've already received their forms are already putting super straight as their gender when they put that there. And if enough people do it, it is the right time. If it is to happen, then this will dictate some government policy for some time, because they will have to recognise the category as real. Or real enough, I suppose. Does that make sense?
Well, yes. I mean, it would be the same phenomenon, as I say, with the Jedis. It will be interesting to see what happens. I don't think it will have quite the effect, simply because
it's just a meme.
The gag is much more niche, and it's online rather than the Jedi thing was quite widespread, and you had stand-up comics making fun, making jokes about it on television.
But I don't know who it is, but there's quite a large number of prominent lesbians who are doing this, who are also doing this. So that would be. Who are promoting the idea of doing it as a protest on the census to identify as super lesbian or whatever.
These would be the TERFs, I'm assuming.
Oh, presumably, this being TERF island.
I am using the jargon that is basically thrust upon them. But yes, I would assume it's that group. Yes.
Indeed. So it'll be interesting to see how much traction it gains. Especially, we won't get the actual census results until later this year. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Anyway. But if people want to collect my sexual orientation from now on, I'm afraid I shall simply have to tick that other box and declare myself to be super straight. Britisher, obviously, you will just tick other and then leave it blank, because who could quantify what you are?
There is that. Yes, it's yeah. I think if there would be a vote on it, then I would more than likely just be referred to as a pervert, because I mean, given that I've pretty much haven't had an MP call me as much, who am I to argue?
Oh dear! Have you been interacting with the cultural elites again, Britisher?
Oh no! This goes back to my quite a few years to my days when I was campaigning against various laws and whatever, and therefore I came in contact, or had to write to and correspond with various ministries and MPs and whatever. But yes, there was one MP I met who basically, what did he say? He had this wonderfully fruity way of, if it were left to people like me, and you can imagine how the tone of people like you was delivered, if you know what I mean.
Oh dear.
Then we would have people having sex in the street. It was pretty much his way of sort of, going, you slut. I just shrugged it off. What else could you do? But yes, that's what we were up against.
I see. So, have you heard this news story, which is Burger King saying,
"Oh yes,
women belong in the kitchen"?
Yes, I think quite a few people are drawing completely the wrong conclusions because they haven't read the rest of the thread.
Well, it's not just that; it's the fact that Of course, this is a viral marketing campaign in and of itself. They know exactly what they are doing. And that this tweet itself has amassed over 610,000 likes so far, along with many retweets, obviously. And the people who are, calling this a misogynist statement, etc., etc., are saying that the reason that it's misogynist is not because that Burger King go into in the next 2 tweets about how they're actually promoting a new scholarship program specifically for women.
They need more women in the kitchen.
They're more sexist. And because only 20% of the chefs are women, they're on a mission to change the gender ratio in the restaurant industry by empowering female employees to pursue a culinary career, because that's exactly what women want if they want a culinary career, to have it in Burger King. But the women on this who have been very offended about it have pointed out that the second tweet could have fit in the first tweet. There's no character limit issues, and it would have been just as impactful, but I don't think it would have. And obviously everyone understands this is another attempt of big brands attempting to be relatable.
Big brands having values.
Yeah.
But in this case, I think big brands also playing silly buggers with Twitter.
Yes.
Because, of course, a huge amount of people only saw the first tweet and therefore responded with, "Based Burger King. Burger King goes Chad." And you just thought, yes, if only you'd read the rest.
So yes, this is all come off because of International Women's Day. It's quite interesting. Just somebody just going, "One of your burgers gave me explosive diarrhea. F you, Burger King." I hate.
You understand what I mean when I think that perhaps Burger King foresaw how predictable some people would be.
They 100% know how the game is played. The person behind this is exactly the same as the person behind Wendy's account throwing shade at other big brands, etc.
Well, yes, right? But in this case, it's a sort of double bluff, isn't it? Because you're getting the people who basically are anti-woke to like your tweet because they don't read the rest of the stream, even though you are actually promoting something. You're promoting your wokeness.
I mean, I guess.
So that's what I mean with it's kind of knowing how people will react, and thus almost using it against them.
Yeah, of course. This is a marketing.
So all those people who are so convinced that they're totally based and Chad out there, be a little less transparent.
Oh, of course. The tweet has made its way through a committee. I mean, obviously, right? There's no way that this is just something that Burger King arbitrarily pointed out. But that doesn't mean that we can't laugh at some of the responses. I hate when people say women should stay in the kitchen. How are they supposed to clean the rest of the house? KFC apparently has a gaming channel called KFC Gaming Finger Clicking Good, and they put up a kernel variant of "the best time to delete this post was immediately after posting it, the second best time is now," so that they could get some clout off of this, to which Burger King responded, "Why would we delete a tweet that's drawing attention to a huge lack of female representation in our industry? We thought you'd be on board with this as well. We've launched a scholarship to help give more of our female employees the chance to pursue a culinary career." I'm just waiting until it gets past some marketing team that they decide that they want to help black-owned or sort of minority groups, black and minority ethnic groups in their business, and so they just tweet out N-words. Come and get this. Like, at what point does that become stop being off limits? It's just it's still cringe.
I mean, we already know it's not off limits if you're you're a rapper of the right persuasion.
Yes. Then we have the cringe lords, of course. Mark Dice here. Women not knowing how to cook is a major contributor to the decline of Western civilization. Thanks for helping point them back in the right direction.
You've unearthed an anecdote. I don't know. Maybe some people in the chat will remember this because it's not too long ago. I would guess it's perhaps about 5 years ago or so. Perhaps a tad longer, but it's something like that. And there was this news story that did the rounds, where the French, several sort of high-ranking chefs in France were speaking out, saying, look, we have to do something. Because what had happened was that due to the feminist movement in the 70s, obviously producing a generation of women who thought it would be inappropriate to teach their daughters how to cook because sexual stereotype and all that, they've ended up with a lot of grown women who now can't cook, basically according to French standards, which one would say are rather high.
Yeah, but, I don't know.
Not only can they not cook to French standards, but what is worrying the sort of French cuisine culture over there is that some of their best-selling cookery books are now by British celebrity chefs. So when the French start buying Jamie Oliver books in order to work out how to cook,
oh dear,
that's when French cooking royalty start getting worried and start complaining, live on air. So yeah, but perhaps some people can, can recall that distantly. But I remember sort of for 1 or 2 days that made headlines. And of course, you can imagine the British tabloids were having a lot of fun with the idea that the best-selling cookery books in France turned out to be by British celebrity chefs.
Yes. I can see... I just... I mean, the decline of culinary skill goes down, but at least the English have an excuse for it in the fact that we lost so much stuff via rationing. But it's still like, it's infuriating. The French as well, in particular, have this uncanny ability to make their peasant dishes difficult to cook. Do you know what I mean? Most of their elite cuisine is peasant dishes repurposed and made pretty and gourmeted up and then complicated to an obscene degree.
Yes, but I mean, their peasant dishes have a certain quality. I mean,
Snails.
You have to grant them that.
No.
What is it they say? Because this is one of the things that really annoys some people. I agree with them. I think they're right. But immediately, quite surprising people will suddenly go all SJW and whatever and start complaining. What about India? What about India? And so on. But I think they've got a point when they say there are 3 world cuisines. One is Chinese, the other is Italian, and the other is French. And when you've kind of come in touch with, the cuisine and also the attitude they show towards it, you do kind of have to concede, yes, there's something else going on when it comes to those particular cultures. Yes, I have to kind of grant the French that they have a certain je ne sais quoi. They have a certain sort of standard of food royalty.
No.
But therefore you can imagine what for panic it suddenly sends out in France when they realise that the best-selling cookery books are British ones.
The French should stick to bread and wine. That's it. The rest is ancillary.
So coq au vin is not your thing, then, is it?
No, neither is foie gras. Neither is what was the word for it? Escargot, and neither is. I had a dish.
So the only thing worth having is bread and wine.
No pâté, no nothing. The only thing worth importing from France is that we make better cheese over here, so that's largely relevant. Can't be doing with it. No, the French can be ejected.
How shall we say? You kind of take sort of patriotic chauvinism to a new level, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Based. Okay.
Oh,
So, we got this. In fact, speaking of the French, I have another thing. So, I'm sure you're aware of the cartoon character of Pepe Le Pew.
oh yes, yes.
Pepe Le Pew, the skunk. He was in the original Space Jam with Michael Jordan and all the other Looney Tunes characters. But they're creating a sequel to it, and he is not going to be in it because apparently he
Something tells
normalizes.
me none of the Looney Tune cartoon characters are going to be making any sort of, Chinese jokes by pulling out the corner of their eyes or anything like that.
No,
in that
no.
particular one.
No, I don't.
Given
think
that they will have LeBron James in there.
Yes. They're also, but basically he's not appearing in the sequel because he normalizes rape culture, Britisher.
Yes, this is not LeBron James, but Pepe Le Pew.
Yes, indeed. I support his omission, but only because I find that he normalizes the French.
Yes. Yeah, of course you would. No, I think this is one of those moments where you kind of have to do a double take. It was sort of one of those moments where I saw something yesterday in which somebody was ranting on about Pepe Le Pew, and I replied on Twitter. And then today, it might have been your retweet, I'm not sure, where I saw there was an independent newspaper article. And I looked, and I didn't quite grasp it, and then looked again, and then just burst out laughing. Because, yes, Pepe Le Pew normalizes rape culture. And you just go, you do realize, though, that people aren't really supposed to emulate.
No, he's not a role model. His name is a joke about how much he smells. He is depicted as one of the least attractive animals on Earth, and
from which any other animal will try desperately to get away, but he's too dense to realize it.
And the butt of every joke, get it? The butt of every joke involving him is that he gets, rejected, or abused, or beaten up in his own way for his own misbehaviour.
But as far as he's concerned, no, this is all part of the romantic play.
Yes.
And, yes, normally it begins, doesn't it, with a black lady cat somehow suffering an accident whereby she has a white stripe painted across her back.
Oh, yes.
And thus somewhat resembling a skunk to Pepe Le Pew, who then, of course, just falls madly in love and can't help himself but to woo this gorgeous lady who doesn't want to have anything to do with him. And it's funny. It is slapstick. It's very funny to watch. But yes, apparently this is another part of our childhood that we didn't know was awful, terrible, discriminatory, and to be forgotten at the pain of otherwise being bigots.
Space Jam: A New Legacy, starring LeBron James, originally featured a scene in which the animated French skunk harasses a young woman at the bar. The scene then saw the woman slam him into a chair in retaliation before chucking her drink over him and giving him a slap. This has been cut as something that normalizes rape culture with and it says the character, who has been historically depicted as sexually harassing women, has been criticized before, with comedian Dave Chappelle calling him a rapist in his 2000, so 21 years ago, stand-up special. In a state,
and in which it was more than likely, I'm guessing here, in which it was more than likely presented in such a way that the accusation was ridiculous.
This is even worse because, of course, Greki Santo, who is in the scene, has condemned its removal because she said it was a big deal for her. She said even though Pepe is a cartoon character, if anyone was going to slap a harasser like him, she wanted it to be her, Now the scene is cut, and she doesn't have the power to influence the world through younger generations who will watch it to let younger girls and young boys know that this behaviour is unacceptable.
What could be more influential than Space Jam 2?
And of course, it's a film for kids.
They clearly missed an opportunity here, didn't they? Not just for an alternative way of doing this, but also for clever marketing. Because you could have just had the young lady cat walking by, Pepe Le Pew, his heart kind of bursting out of his chest, immediately falling in love and wanting to walk towards her, only for LeBron James to hold him back and go, no, brother, no. And then you could just have Gillette, the best a man can get, coming in the background.
Yes, shameless.
You see how I'm thinking?
See, you can do this cross-referencing thing, British. I'm very proud of you. It's incredibly frustrating, and I mean, if it's up to parents as well. At the end of the day, it doesn't normalise it. Like, the kids will watch that; they won't really understand what's going on, but it will be funny to see the skunk get slapped.
It's just another version of Tom and Jerry.
Yes, exactly. No one ever looked at Tom and Jerry and actually tried to destroy the house to get at a mouse. Or decided that they were going to put a shotgun through a wall because that's the way they saw it in the cartoon.
No one other than the writers of the film, of the script for the film Mouse Hunt.
Yes.
Familiar with that?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen
that. Last, a film we both have seen.
I haven't seen that since I was a kid, though. So it's
which was about 3 years ago. Yes.
You're talking 2 decades, my friend. 2 decades. But yes. It's a very
it's a lovely film. I think that's a very good film, and Christopher Walken's cameo in that is fantastic.
Can't remember what he does in that cameo off the top.
He's the specialist they call in to get rid of the mouse.
Ah, yes, of course. But, where's this? Yeah. So, I don't think Space Jam 2 is going to be you're quite right. I don't think it's going to be the cultural, iconic hit that
catching the zeitgeist.
Yes,
in decades to come, people will be still talking about Space Jam.
I'm aware people are slightly pissed off as well that Lola Bunny's fat Chebs will not be in the. The remake either.
I did notice that this is now the second character. So always considering that this is a completely inconsequential cartoon from years ago.
Yeah.
That, let's face it, most of us barely remember ever existed.
I enjoyed Space Jam.
And two characters therein have now either had to be altered or cancelled.
Yeah, I don't. She's been deboobed.
Yes, it's true. Otherwise, she's in danger of, sexualizing things too much.
I mean, to be honest,
what does this actually say? I mean,
aside from there just being a general trend of de-breasting women across the arts, especially in animation and so on, there is I look at this and say, well, in some way, was Space Jam responsible for the wave of furries that we currently are not enjoying?
Oh, you are kidding me.
We want to burn off the face of the earth. How many little kids were forever scarred by seeing Lola Bunny as a child and suddenly developed, deranged sexual preferences? So
I recall quite a few cartoons, the likes of Tom and Jerry and Bugs Bunny and whatever, from which Space Jam is very much a derivative. And in those cartoons, made decades and decades ago, there was once in a while a curvaceous Miss Bugs Bunny, or a curvaceous mouse or a cat lady that would catch the eye of either Tom and Jerry. And I don't really think that it turned a great many people into furries et alia.
Are you?
So I don't think
you are
I think
just
of those cartoons which had a much greater traction across society didn't manage it. Then I don't think that the 1990s derivative with a basketball player, which may have had a few seconds of Lola Bunny in it, would manage to create, to have such a cultural wake.
When did they get to you, Britisher? When did they buy you off? How dare you be controlled opposition for big furry?
Well, you see, it's just I will always maintain the position that you do not become what you see. My favourite film is The Highlander. So far, I have not beheaded anybody, nor ever felt the inclination to do so.
I just can't believe what I'm hearing. I never thought that you would become controlled opposition.
Yes. I wonder where you got that terminology from.
Well, it wasn't Lola Bunny, was it?
Sorry?
It wasn't Lola Bunny, was it? I'm making the video game scores violence argument by saying Space Jam causes furries, apparently. 100%.
Yes, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
He liked making that particular argument, and a great many of his supporters who were so totally free speech always chose to ignore that.
It doesn't matter that I came to the conclusion with Aiden. Naturally, we were talking about how media influences people, and we both recognise that according to all of the data, there is no link between the media you consume and your behaviour. So it's or between in any meaningful way, anyway. Even if it does colour your thinking, it's not got any link to behaviour. So I just no. I burn the furries. That's what I say. No more Space Jam. Space Jam 2 will be omitted.
You actually agree that they did the right thing by sparing future generations by not exposing them to Lola Bunny boobage.
They did the right thing for the wrong reasons. That's all I'm saying.
Yes, but I find it a very interesting kind of route we seem to be taking, that almost all sort of aspects of overt femininity need to be kind of removed from anything.
Well, fine. Okay, you can have two.
Anyone could be sort of exposed to in media.
Fine. We will segregate boys and girls as, using our COVID powers that we've retained. We shall segregate them, and then we shall have two versions of the film, and the little girls can see the version with boobas, and the little boys can see the version without, and that will be that.
But you understand what I mean? We
and no adults allowed.
We seem to have entered into a sphere where now the males, in a strange way, purely from a physical perspective, strangely, not from a kind of attitudinal perspective, from a physical perspective, you're now getting these kind of hyper males. They're all built like Vin Diesel and have all got six packs and whatever.
Super males.
Funnily enough, they don't show the same attitudes as once did, say, the likes of Anthony Quinn or Bob Mitchum or other typically male figures we actually knew from previous films. Well, not that you will know who these people are.
Never heard of them in the slightest.
Yes, but on the other hand, while we're kind of creating these kind of super masculine figures, where The Rock and Vin Diesel are everlastingly having to take their shirts off, the opposite is happening with the female, and she's becoming this ever more cloistered thing.
More burqa.
And just going, yes, yeah, this is really healthy. This is really going somewhere. I mean, there have been plenty of sort of jokes made by now about the tendency for the male star in films to take off his shirt.
Yes.
Which, funnily enough, doesn't happen with the female anymore.
Well, funnily enough, the female nudity side of things. First off, it moved entirely to raunchy medieval dramas and so on TV, right? So especially things like Rome and Game of Thrones and all that jazz.
Mhm.
Suddenly, gratuitous nudity suddenly became a thing. Although they decided that they would always, if they were going to show a male nude, he must never be erect. So that's also an interesting thing. We have nude women all the time, and that sort of thing, but never an erect male, which is always funny because almost all of the scenes in which the men are there with their female co-hosts, they're usually doing a sex scene, and it's
But
just
they're
amusing.
never terribly interested.
They're never. It doesn't seem terribly interested. No, not that I have any particular desire to stare at male genitalia, but I just don't care. It's just amusing anecdote there, anyway.
Well, you see, you're more than likely showing your Roman ancestry from a previous life, because of course, when it came to the ancient Romans, they had phalluses everywhere. I mean, they were good luck charms.
Well, yeah, much like the Asiatic cultures today, where you could they're everywhere, fertility-wise. Or you could go the Greek route, where it's like the opposite, where large manhoods were frowned upon, and in fact, having your statue chiseled up with a small penis on it meant that you were an intellectual.
Well, no, actually, when it came to the deities and the athletes and whatever, the reason they bestowed them with small genitalia was not that the genitalia were supposed to be small. It was the genitalia were supposed to be normal-sized. It's just that it emphasized the yet greater bulk, the greatness, the largeness, the humongousness of the creature, that it was just so much bigger. That, from the way I understand it, that was the way that one was supposed to interpret that.
I mean, you interpret it how you will, British. I, as far as I understand, they considered to be an enlarged manhood to be closer to the bestial man, and therefore were not all that fussed.
It is interesting to note that when it comes to the vases and whatever of the ancient world, most of which being Hellenistic,
yes,
most of them are not on display in museums. So you have these beautifully decorated vases, thousands of which have survived, mostly intact.
Yeah.
But most of them are somewhere in sort of a back room or a warehouse somewhere and not on public display, because usually it has men with men and cats with dogs and just about everything else going at it like the clappers.
So what our society will look like in the next,
a bit like certain YouTube channels.
Yes, that we'd rather not go back to. Good grief. The British. I mean, you got very excited. You found your new favourite channel to watch.
Hellenistic vases, the YouTube of the ancient world, ladies and gentlemen.
It's like, I see you got the new vase, Derek. Yes. You wonder how many people. There's just this obsession with sex. Although one could argue that almost everything comes down to sex in some way, shape, or form eventually. Which is,
well, I mean, Freud would say that it is the sort of primary agent. Yes.
It's in the same way that radio shows, etc. I can't remember which particular radio it was, had like some kind of euphemism segment on their show where you could turn anything into a euphemism. But it's one of those things where humans, like, I don't like this perspective, this idea that it's all about sex. It all comes back down to procreation. I always think that we are more than our loins, frothing or otherwise, right? So
I think I agree with you insofar as that it's often much too overinterpreted. You basically ask, why do people chew gum, and then through a series of strained arguments, you eventually end up with sex, and you just go, well, no.
Well, not even that.
That's a bit the same thing. Like, everything is evolution. Everything is based on evolution. You just go, hang on. I think one has to be careful. People don't like tea because of evolution. It's we have evolved to like tea. Please, it's one can take an argument that is as such correct, and then just strain it beyond belief. And I think that's what you're referring to.
Well, it's all about what are the motivations behind things at their core level. And a friend of mine is very keen always on relating everything back to sex, and I find it very frustrating because it implies that there's nothing transcendent in everything. They'll take something like Michelangelo's paintings on the ceiling and so on, and they will say, oh, but he hid loads of other things in there. Da Vinci's stuff, he hid loads of stuff in there. All of our painters, etc. Well, why do you paint aside from anything else? And it's not that there's something beyond the self. There's something about beauty as a concept which is laudable and transcendent in and of itself. No, it must always come back to either attempting to get men and women or something, particularly women.
It reduces everything to our being just animals.
Yes.
So there is nothing, there is no added bonus with being human. It's just that, we're just more complex, but in the end everything just goes back to our base instincts.
Yeah.
And you just think, well, no, that's not really the way I regard the world. So I think in this case, rare as these things are, we actually agree.
Yeah, I know, but it's like the people are saying sex and money, but even these two can't be divorced from one another because money is seen as a route to sex, and then you get, if you reduce other some more psychological processes, if you take something like the desire to protect family, etc., well, that just comes back down to your familial instincts, etc. When it comes to selecting someone as a partner, it doesn't come down to, love gets reduced to this degree of genetic similarity multiplied by agreeableness or disagreeableness and openness, and you just go, oh, for goodness sake, like, you can't.
And that's when you get to the point where you wonder why there are people who are making live streams telling the world how any woman, in order to be anywhere near the top tier of attractiveness, has to be conservative.
Yeah, I remember this. Yeah, I mean,
no, Taffy, I will never forgive you for that.
I look at it and I go, there must be something more, and it's very frustrating when you look at things and you go, well, life may very well be deterministic, right? It could be that effectively we're all running on the equivalent of an enormous evolutionary biological sort of experiment where if you could account for all of the variables, you could predict everyone's behavior and everyone's thought process at any particular given point of time. But the reality is that it's all so much more hideously and beautifully complex than that we're never going to approach that. And I also think that it's very, I think it's actually detrimental to your own mental well-being to attempt to do that, I suppose. Just because
I think some people, they suffer from some strange sense of humility, whereby they feel that if they attribute to themselves some sort of special status, that they would actually be better than the rest of nature by being human, or not better, but perhaps on a higher level. That would be some sort of hubris, and you just feel, no, that's just being realistic.
I mean, there's this, that we, as much as other animals have some complex systems, they are animals, and they're not capable of complex thought and abstractions.
Yes, your cat doesn't really love you. Yes.
Yeah. Well, there's a huge debate which goes on in things like psychology of do animals actually have emotions? This is a curious thing. Do animals become depressed, etc.? I think it's arguable that they do. I mean, there's things like the poor dog who, his owner had died, and he was at the funeral, and it was open casket, and then he goes into the ground, and then they buried him, and the dog just refused to leave the grave and made this awful howling sound and just refused to leave until eventually they forced the dog away, and it died a couple of weeks later. It's an old dog, and
You see, now you've missed the obvious comedic potential of that, because you could have told that story, and then after you said that they forced the dog away, took it away, and took it round the back of the shed and shot it.
oh, for goodness sake!
Yeah, you just spoiled. You just threw away the comedic potential.
Oh, there's so much comedic potential in the tragic. Yeah, and things like that. But there's a debate going on with things. For instance, does the dog know? Does the dog looking at you with pleading eyes, for instance, when it's done something wrong, and it tells you off? Does the dog obey you because of authority? Does the dog obey you sometimes because it trusts you? Like, what is it thinking? What's going through the dog's head? And so it's things like, is the dog happy to see you in the morning, etc., or is it thinking about the walk that it's going to get, and therefore you're a means to an end more than anything else? So that there's all sorts of curious things there. It's like, can dogs feel guilt? The look on their faces, whether or not they know they're going to get a particular reaction by giving this particular look on their face, etc., etc. Anyway, it goes all the way around and basically comes down to, once again, what psychology struggles with, which is the black box problem, which is you can't observe the inner workings of a human, much less an animal's mind. So you can only speculate, really. But it's curious sort of ways to think about it. Yeah, chat saying dead dogs equal comedy potential. The Britisher 2021. Thanks for that, Birdsey. Right, let's catch up with the old super chats. Anakin Cringewalker says, "You've heard of TERFs. Now get ready for surfs. Super straight, exclusive, radical friends." Yes, this is also going around. In fact, if I search this now, is surfs. Let's see if this is coming up. Yes. For the potential perennially confused serfs, yes. I don't think it means super straight exclusive radical friends, but it is super straight exclusionary radical. Super straight exclusionary radical friends, or something like that, and all that. So that's quite amusing. I can't see anything specific here, but it was going around earlier. Artful Lodger says, if 2 out of 3 uni students are female, will these happy consumers inevitably become hapless victims of mis-selling of education and their debt cancelled? Sorry, I'm going to say that again. If 2 out of 3 uni students are female, will these happy consumers inevitably become hapless victims of mis-selling of education and their debt cancelled?
Will they have their cancelled? I mean, that basically sooner or later either the education system has to concede that what it taught them was of no use, or that through some democratic means they managed to secure themselves some sort of amnesty. Who knows? Either is possible. But yes, I think we can agree that largely when it comes to universities, there is a certain amount of, well, let's call it wasted potential.
Yes, I would say this. Oh, people are saying that David had a small penis to imply innocence. The statue of the David.
I'm not even sure that his appendage is particularly small.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. I haven't looked at the David in a long time. I don't know if he was one of these ones to have it hacked off either.
Michelangelo did change some of the sort of proportions of the statue, but I wouldn't have thought his genitalia was part of that. Michelangelo, clever sod that he was, realized that butch men aren't very elegant. And because he wanted to imbue David with grace, he therefore needed to elongate some of the limbs. Because you know how there are these sort of memes of how silly some sort of bodybuilders look in suits.
Yes, yes.
And so I think if you look at the arm that hangs down on the right, because the other arm is kind of curled up onto his shoulder, isn't it, to pick the sling from his shoulder.
Something
So
like
the other arm is straight. If you actually look at that, the back of the hand is too long. And I think the underarm is also elongated. Now, with various other artists, one might think, oh, we've made a mistake. But with the likes of Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci and whatever, we know that they were such perfectionists that these were not mistakes. And if the statue of David were actually according to, complete human proportions, he wouldn't be as graceful. So Michelangelo used a few tricks in order to make his statue beautiful, knowing that otherwise he'd just end up with a sort of, buff guy. So who knows whether that also applies to the genitalia, but I doubt it.
Oh, I wouldn't know. But there we go. All right, so there's that. Mighty Balzac as well says, the Minger and the Ginger. I assume he's referring to the ex-royal couple, Prince Markle and her wife Harry.
Well, I can only advise everyone. It's an old video, but it's what is it? 2nd of December 2017, I think.
Something along that.
This is prior to the marriage, and I basically highlighted how the lady had, was a UN representative for women in leadership positions and things like that. So she was a sort of pucker feminist and had every intention to be a strong, independent woman with ideas of her own in the royal family. And I was kind of pointing out how that doesn't really work.
No. And now here she is waxing lyrical about the firm, whilst at the same time having to deal with the fact that she is the one under investigation currently because of complaints that she bullied staff relentlessly.
I think when it comes to contradictions, I think the ultimate contradiction that really says it all is their desire for privacy.
Yes, at the same time,
which they expressed in a high-profile interview with Oprah Winfrey, watched by millions,
with consistent press releases, announcements. I saw something the other day showing that her wardrobe had been curated so that she was dressed exactly the same as Diana in a number of like-for-like shots. And very much a curated social media.
Well, also a wonderful tweet I saw. I don't remember it verbatim, but the essence of it was something along the lines of: the multimillionaire princess tells the billionaire how much of a victim she is.
Yeah, the fact that she keeps leaning into this biracial identity, even though no one in their right mind has ever thought about her race in any way, shape, or form. And
when I first saw her, I didn't realise she was mixed race.
She isn't. I mean, her mother was mixed race, and she.
I don't think most people would in any way see her and immediately go, "Oh, that's a mixed race person."
I mean, as much as
it's absolutely farcical.
As much as most people don't give a shit and it's irrelevant, and most people are like, "Oh, she might have a little bit of a tan," it's just not a thing over here. In the same way,
anybody who read their Flashman, yes, I'm bringing him up again, not so obvious, will of course know that in that case, according to how Not So Obvious describes it, she would be a quadroon.
A what?
A quadroon.
I'm unfamiliar with this term.
In the olden days, before everything was deemed racist, that would be one of the ways in which one would describe people. So, so if someone is a quarter black, they would be referred to as a quadroon.
Oh, I see.
So I think you could go as far down as an octoroon.
I see. I don't care, anyway. But it is...
Well, it's just a bit of history.
No. That's an interesting anecdote in and of itself. I just don't care if she's a quadroon or not, and neither do most of the British public.
Well, yeah,
They're also pointing out.
I was completely surprised when I was told, "Oh, this woman is a racial minority," and I went, "What?"
It's also
she doesn't look it.
She's also not something she's ever leaned into until she became a surrogate royal. But
Well, I mean, isn't there that program, where people find out about their ancestry?
I don't know. Probably.
And you get, so they basically some celebrity, sometimes a real C-lister from a sort of soap opera or something. And they've got professional researchers who will then look into this person's ancestry and then tell them some interesting facts.
Mm-hmm.
And in several cases, it's happened that people who are completely white are told that they had a black ancestor.
Yes, or recent
people who are completely black are told that they're actually descended from a slave owning, plantation owner in Jamaica or whatever.
Yeah. Usually a black plantation owner as well.
No, a white plantation owner.
No. It's sometimes a.
So their entire concept of I am black, I am the victim class, I am suddenly falls apart because hang on a moment, one of my ancestors actually was one of the perpetrators, and it's just to look at me you would never think it, because within a very short space of time these racial traits can completely disappear, as we see with Meghan Markle. Which, of course, makes such a complete joke about the fact of people making such a big thing about it. Because, well, if you can't even tell, it's... didn't the Nazis in Germany also go to that length? How many generations back someone was Jewish?
Well, they were eugenicists and phrenologists, so yeah.
And you sort of go, well, it's sort of remarkable how many Jews... according to them, people who were Jews, even though they're, a 16th Jew or something like that, actually lived in plain sight. And you just thought, for a people who believed in all this master race thing and believed that you would be able to tell immediately, it's rather funny how a lot of them seemed to have people who they themselves would condemn around them, about whom they were completely ignorant of their status.
Yes, indeed. How did we get here? It's just...
Well, I don't know, but it is funny how how society as a whole, because of all this wokeness, has become... Well, the way we've got here is via Princess Woke.
No, of course.
It's because everything has become so hung up on these issues of race. The best way of damaging anybody these days is to allege something regarding sex or regarding race. And race is perhaps the most toxic of all. And to me, it's absolutely staggering because, in the 90s, this had pretty much disappeared. And now it's become this huge thing again. And, I remember sort of late 90s or early 2000s, I once commented about some boy band. And they were all black, or I think they were all black or Asian or whatever. And I said, "Isn't this strange that lots of girls around the country have this boy band on their wall, and nobody cares? Because once upon a time, even in the 80s, one was still referring to things like that." Even though by that time it was very quickly becoming an irrelevance. And so one could see how things really had advanced. They had advanced to the point where nobody cared. It was now an irrelevance whether all the teenage white girls of the country had a, coloured boy band on the wall. But now we're sort of teetering on the edge of the pit of falling right back into thing that took us so many decades to climb out of. I just... I just find we've kind of entered some sort of madness.
It's swings and roundabouts, isn't it? We've come around again, and you wonder at what point it will finally fucking die.
It's this bizarre thing where we've reinvented a problem.
Yeah.
And
it's like we've snatched
the problem.
We've snatched
defeat.
We've
reinvented the problem in the name of fighting it.
We've snatched defeat from the jaws of victory in many ways. Yeah, it's infuriating. In the name of fighting it, yeah, as well. Like, it all comes back around to the point where we're now people are demanding fucking segregation. Speaking of which,
I mean that's just the cherry atop the cake, isn't it?
Yeah.
When now you've actually got the minority demanding segregation.
Yeah. So
and
here,
you go, hang on a moment. What about Martin Luther King?
Yeah. So here we go. Here's the thing. This is for Columbia University. This has just been sent. There's a virtual ceremony schedule. So obviously they're graduating in chunks this year, and they've done it with.
Yeah, you say schedule.
Schedule. Ceremonies are listed chronologically. Native graduation, followed by the lavender graduation, which is for the LGBTQI+ community, followed by the Asian graduation, followed by the FLI generation graduation. Do you know what FLI is?
No.
First generation or low income community. So first generation immigrants and low income community.
You'll have to send me this link. This might well make the week that was by just how pathetic this sounds.
Followed by the Latinx graduation.
Of course.
And then finally, in last place, as usual, the black graduation. So that's over.
No, I mean, you still haven't mentioned the white graduation.
Well,
so
that's in the native graduation, presumably.
Oh, is it?
So that's the.
I thought the native would be the Indians.
I have no idea, but basically, yeah, I don't know how that's working. But
what I find so interesting is, what do you do with your Latinx, but you're also gay? Which group do you belong to?
You choose, Britisher, or the choice will be made for you. Ludicrous.
You get your own subcategory, do you?
Ludicrous. Yeah, it's just. Is there a lavender Latinx graduation? I think how bigoted, how awful. How on earth will we ever recover from the fact that this has happened to us?
The sweet scent of lavender, yes.
Amazing. Thank you, Super Straight. Stop spamming, please. They're saying they've got an anthem on Super Straight available on their channel. So, yeah, someone said, Mr. Gently Benevolent, of course, saying, what if I'm a lavender Latinx black mix from a low-income family? Which ceremony do I attend? Perhaps you get to graduate 4 times and you get 4 times the degrees, Mr. Gently.
You get your PhD in the post, yes.
Yeah, everything else. How many do you want, basically? No white category, of course not. I just... the fact that they're having to segregate in the first place is infuriating. Like, they should just do it by department, not by inherent characteristics. I mean, fucking hell.
What they ought to do is they ought to go ahead with the ceremony, but they ought to have quite aggressive white guys in those mirrored shades.
Yeah.
Possibly wearing some kind of uniform, telling them, "You stand there."
Just to...
And basically have, sort of their idea of the sort of white cisgendered patriarchy, kind of there ordering them, you get in that queue.
Yeah.
And then when it's kind of put to them like that, see if they still like the segregation. And perhaps as a sort of slight reminiscence of the 1950s or so, have a few policemen with police dogs on chains. And perhaps a few sort of fire hoses or whatever, just to get the sort of full Martin Luther King feel, but sort of ordering them in which row to stand, and then see whether they still agree with it or not.
Well, it's all a good LARP for them until they start demanding, segregated teachers, And so, like if you're a black student, you shall only be taught by black academics, etc. And at which point, when this happens,
that's bound to come.
I fully,
yes.
I fully expect it. But it's all very well until that happens, and they're all very happy and leaning into their black identity, etc. And then, of course, the disparities will happen, and so it will be things like, the Asian, the Chinese side of the school is suddenly doing much better than all the other sides of the school, and the blacks suddenly would go, well, this is quite problematic, isn't it? Because, is there a they might have to admit there's a cultural problem, but it won't be. It will be there's a systemic racism problem, clearly. But how? Because you've removed all of the systemic racist influences.
Well, what was the there was a book I read years ago about sort of, I think it's got something, the equalities, the rise of the equalities industry or something like that. It's called,
right.
And in it had some sort of rather interesting statistics regarding racism and whatever, which have kind of always stuck with me, whereby they kind of, he kind of lays out these figures and says, well, how can this be racism?
Mm-hmm.
So if we look at, Asian pupils, what we call Asian, but, to the rest of the world, it's sort of the Indian subcontinent, isn't it? India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. How is it possible that they have such divergence of results? So the Indians do very well. They do better than the white population in British schools. Whereas the Bangladeshis and the Pakistanis don't. However, the Pakistanis do much worse than the Bangladeshis. He was sort of saying, well, if this is down to racism, it's very specific. I mean, even though those three population groups look exactly the same, the teachers would have to be able to discriminate individually based on which subgroup they come from. And he said you can do the same with blacks, whereby Nigerian immigrants, so that the children of Nigerian immigrants do much better at school than the children of Jamaican immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the Jamaicans are actually of West African descent. I mean, that's where the slaves were shipped from, to Jamaica.
Right.
So again, it's almost impossible to, by eye, keep these groups apart, and yet they are distinct in their ability to produce certain results. And therefore, how does this racism work? If it is racism that is keeping the Jamaicans from achieving better results, why is the same racism not affecting the Nigerians to the same extent?
Yes. Well,
so yes, when it comes to these,
it's because they sound white over the phone.
Of racism in education, there are some questions that need answering.
It's because they sound white over the phone. Clearly, that Nigerian accent,
yes.
Or perhaps they've got English-sounding names.
It's more than likely that the Nigerians are all related to royalty, because there's quite a few Nigerian princes, I believe.
Yes, they're everywhere, although they're quite often in dire circumstances.
Well, either that or they're military generals, yes.
Oh dear, right. Okay. Well, I think with that, I'll bring us to a close for the evening. I do have one more super chat that has come in. Mr. Gently Benevolent says, how do I get my Furisher merchandise? Well, if somebody decides that they're going to draw the Britisher as a furry, I will put it on a mug and shamelessly exploit his image.
And that is you, swine.
You want to be depicted as a swine, Britisher? I see. The Britisher's fursona, as it were, happens to be porcine in nature. So if you want to make that happen, then make that happen, and we'll promote it, obviously. The Britisher loves everything that comes out of this channel regarding his lore and the way he's perceived on the internet. Don't you, Britisher? You love it all.
Oh, it's how shall we say? I can't stop thinking about it.
It's
so wonderful.
It's an honour and a privilege, isn't it, Britisher?
then again, I mean, I'm quite glad in that case that you didn't watch The Week That Was, which clearly you haven't, because otherwise you would no doubt have made some other, what was it, third-person joke.
Your persona.
Persona, yes. Yes. Given that by now I'm reduced to making animal noises.
Go on, make some animal noises.
No, not on this particular one, but on The Week That Was.
Oh, I see. So if you want to see the listen to the Britisher making animal noises, The Week That Was is your fix apparently. And if you want to attach those to any kind of fan art, then do feel free. Just a quick reminder, of course, that if you're interested in supporting the channel, you could do so by hitting that join button. We are proudly sponsored by the like button, so please make sure you smash that on your way out. And of course, as always, we do have merch available via the links in the description. Thank you so much to everyone for watching. Thank you to the Britisher for suffering through, as always.
Yes, and I'm such a victim. If Oprah Winfrey is interested in interviewing me, I will be available.
Well, my super straighters and super gays and super lesbians among us, have a fantastic week. I will see you next time. I will let you know if anything's going to happen with regards to another psychology video. And with that, take care, everyone. Good night.